Dobar dan svima, dobar dan svim trenerima, svim ljudima koji prate košarku, igračima. Dobrodošli u naš Discord podcast. Sa nama je jedan trener danas koji je poznat po svojim knjigama pre svega i koji je poznati autor u košarkaškom svetu. Njegovo ime je McCormick. On je držao preko 200 klinika u svetu, maltene na svim kontinentima. I za njega možemo da kažemo da je on jedan košarkaški i trenerski inovator. Njegove knjige kao što su Saba, Nada, Fake Fundamental su veoma poznate u trenerskom svetu i jako mnogo ih kupuju treneri i evo ovom priliku mogu i ja da dam savet da bilo koji trener uzme te knjige, promenit će im način razmišljanja. Isto tako, košarka je sport koji se brzo menja iz godine u godinu i shodno tome mislim da je Brian jedan od gosta koji će nam reći nešto više o tome kako se košarka menja, na koji način, zbog čega je bitno da pratimo trendove, da pratimo različite načine igre, načine treninga i veoma smo počastvovani što možemo da ugostimo Briana danas u našem podcastu i veliko hvala Brianu što je prihvatio naš zahtev da bude gost u našem podcastu. Brian, thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for being so approachable. Thank you for being so down to earth because this is the rarity in today's world. For coaches, this is my experience. And I think it's obligation of coaches to help another coaches, young coaches without much experience to gain that experience and to become better. And this is very important in our industry and profession. We need to help each other. And I think I will just say I first started to have contact with you on your YouTube channel when I saw one of your actions when you were in Poland. And it was some kind of a ghost screen action. I cannot remember correctly, but I remember I did a comment and you instantly sent me your WhatsApp number and everything, and you just told me you can contact me whenever you want, we can talk, we can have a chat, whatever. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I would like more coaches to be this approachable and this open. And this is something which gives me hope to me and to many coaches in our profession, that we can have senior coaches who are willing to help us and to help us grow, to help us improve, and to help us get better decisions in the future. Welcome, Brian, and thank you once again for being that kind and for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. I don't know, it's just I had another coach call me sometime this summer, and I answered the phone, and he was like surprised that I actually answered the phone. And it's not the first time that it's happened. He was like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to actually answer your phone like I was some, I don't know, big time person or something." And stuff. So yeah, when people contact me, I try to get back in touch or answer whatever questions, whether it's email or direct message or whatever. So, you know, but yeah, I guess not everybody does that.
Yeah, true. Like I try to contact many coaches, and some of them reply, some of them don't, and and that's just life. That's just how it goes, I suppose. And with years, as I get older, I'm starting to realize some things, that it's just how it is. And it's a rarity, I will say again, that coach is willing to talk with other coaches, and I really appreciate. And I will say, like, because you make a lot of influence to another coaches around the world, because they were following your books, they were buying it, they were watching your clinics. And I will say in all of them, like, thank you, and keep doing the great job, and keep promoting the basketball in the best possible way, and we will follow you, and we will try to learn from you as much as possible. Yes, so can you tell me maybe in the beginning, how did the coaching start for you? How did you get into it? Did you played basketball in a high school level? Did you play in the college? Who influenced you as a coach? Can you tell me something more about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I played into high school. Then I got injured a little bit in high school, and that's kind of when I started coaching. You know, my dad was my coach when I was young. You know, like when I was growing up, uh, at least where I lived and went to school, we didn't join the team until fifth grade. So like probably 11 years old. Um, you know, so we just played like at recess and stuff before that. But um, so my dad coached me like from fifth to eighth grade. You know, basically middle school. And then he had coached me in little league and baseball as well. So I kind of always thought that I would, you know, coach when I was older, you know, but I'm more thought I'd be a coach like my dad was my coach. You know, I'd have whatever kids and just coach their teams and stuff like that. I never really, especially at that point, I never really thought of it as a career. Like I always looked at, um, you know, the coaches. My high school coaches were all teachers, so they're all teachers first. You know, so to me, coaching wasn't really a career. Um, you know, but it seemed like, you know, pro coaches or college coaches, it was just like so far in the distance that it was, you know, they had some special knowledge or something like that you know, it wasn't even a possibility. And then you know, I coached throughout college, um, and I guess um, before my senior year of college, I went to a couple. I started going to college camps. You know, as a coach, like um, I know Cal was one of the first ones that I went to their men's camp, and I know I went to University of Oklahoma before I graduated. Um, I guess I went to Cal before my senior year started, and I went to University of Oklahoma after my senior year, or at the end of my senior year, and just going to those camps. Like I remember going to Cal's camp, and you know, I met their associate head coach. I think he was the associate head coach at that time because he had been a um, high school coach um, that my high school played against in the playoffs, like in the Northern California playoffs. And so I remember talking to him, and so I got to meet the coaches then, like their brand new coach that they had just hired. I think he's the Santa Barbara head coach now. But anyway, I just remember talking to these college coaches and thinking like they don't really know anything. Like there is no special knowledge, you know. They're doing most of the same stuff that my high school coaches were doing, you know, and my dad was doing with us, you know, in eighth grade, you know, when he was telling me he didn't know anything about coaching, you know, he was just, you know, a real estate guy that was coaching because nobody else wanted to coach, you know, kind of thing. Like, you know, and there was no coaching books or YouTube channels or anything like that. Like, you know, my dad never went to a coaching clinic when he was coaching us. He just, you know, did what he thought was best, you know, and, you know, I don't know if my high school coaches went to a clinic or not, or, you know, our most influential coach at our school was probably our JV coach, and he was a religion teacher. And I think I might have been his last team. I think he quit and started working at a homeless shelter and feeding, you know, the homeless because, you know, he was really drawn to that. So, because I went to a Catholic school. So, you know, so going to those camps and like meeting actual college coaches and seeing the kind of things that they were doing, you know, even though they were doing different things at camp than, you know, they would have been doing with their teams, you know, during the season, it kind of made me realize like, you know, why can't I be, you know, coach at this level? Like there's no special knowledge. They don't know anything special. They don't really have any special training, you know, like, you know, and again, the US is different than some countries, you know, where there's actual coach education and you have to have a degree in coaching and stuff like that, you know, like I said, you know, our high school coach, you know, one had a degree in religion. I think our varsity coach, I forgot what he was our dean, so I forgot what he taught before he became our dean. I think he might have been an English teacher, you know, so he probably had an English degree, you know. The college coaches that I met, you know, they didn't have degrees in coaching or even kinesiology or even psychology. You know, some of them were business majors or whatever. So, you know, they didn't possess anything, you know, special. It was just a matter of they had the job, you know, by whatever means they got the job. And so that kind of changed my thinking a little bit. I still never really considered coaching from that standpoint. Like when I was graduating from college, I was coaching Special Olympics, and I just wanted to keep coaching Special Olympics and take over as the special ed teacher at the school where most of our athletes went to school, which was Dorsey High School in Los Angeles. But because the teacher that we worked with was retiring, and so I wanted to take over her class. But I didn't have a master's degree in special ed, so I wasn't qualified. So they wouldn't let me take the class over. So I got a job working for Special Olympics, and then where I moved for that job, I got a job as an assistant, college, like volunteer NAIA college coach. And that's kind of, from that point on, I basically only coached. Like I eventually quit the job working for Special Olympics because it was like a management job, and I found it kind of boring. From that point on, I just coached. And never really thought of anything else. I just, whenever, I just figured, if I didn't have a job, like now, like I would just find a way to make money until I got my next coaching job kind of thing. And I've never really, I guess the only time I kind of look back is when I went to get my doctorate. But even then, like I was going to get my doctorate, still intending to coach. I kind of thought of being a professor as like a kind of a late career goal. When I'm ready to retire from coaching, it'd be good to have the educational background to be able to be a professor and help, hopefully, with, in some kind of coaching program and help younger coaches that are just starting out, as a professor, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't even remember the question, but that's kind of how I got into coaching and how I kind of, in terms of a mentor, like,
Yes.
I don't really consider myself to have a mentor. Like the guy who kind of shifted my coaching the most was probably a guy named Jerome Green, who I coached with at Hoop Masters in Los Angeles the year after I graduated. So I graduated from college, and then I went and worked for, as the volunteer NAI assistant for, like 6 months. And I learned some technical things from that coach. Like he's a pretty good coach. But I left the day the season ended. I basically moved out and left and moved back to Los Angeles, where I went to college, and went back to coaching kids. And so Jerome was kind of oversaw my team because his son and his nephew were on my team. And he didn't really coach. He wasn't really an assistant coach. He was like the program director, but he was at all of my practices because of his son. And so he was he was kind of the first person, because when I was the college assistant, like the only thing I got to do was like run like guard workouts, like, yes. For 10 minutes of practice, it'd be like, guards down here, post down here, and I work with the guards doing, basic, straight line dribbling drills and shooting drills and stuff like that. And so I got back to working with, 9-year-olds, and, kind of had that same mentality, like I had already started doing some individual training before that. Like when I was still in college, I did some individual training. And so like I kind of had that mindset of, skill development is individual, and we've got to do these individual drills. And that's kind of how we were starting out on the under 9 team. And Jerome was the one who was like, Brian, they got to play. Like, they don't understand the point of all these drills if they don't play. They need to play, they need to play, they need to play.
Right.
And so that's kind of, and so, I still had the mindset of, well, we have to improve, and we have to, improve our dribbling, passing, whatever. And so that's kind of where some of the drills that I still use, like 2-on-2 rugby and 3-on-3 hockey and stuff like that, those were drills that I devised to kind of combine the two things of me wanting to do, or me having the mindset of more drills and stuff like that, but then his mindset of we need to play. So how can we like kind of do drills with play, basically? And that's where those, 2-on-2 rugby, like we used mostly for me, it was set up as kind of a pressing drill and breaking a press kind of drill, but really I knew that it would just lead to fast break layups, And so that was, instead of just doing a 1-on-0 layup drill, it'd be a 1-on-0 with the trailer, or potentially 2-on-1, or 2-on-1 with the trailer, depending on how they broke the press. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of full court dribbling and speed layups and stuff like that. And so from that standpoint, like, Jerome's kind of the one that changed my thinking the most. But I only worked with him for like 4 months, so you know, I don't know that he mentored me that much. It's just kind of he was the first one who kind of shifted my coaching in that more kind of game-based type mentality.
Oh, okay. At that time, did you know about, because I know that you respect this coach very much, and that I also respect him, because I watched countless number of clinics on the internet which I could find. What about the coach Michael McKay from the Canadian Basketball Association? Did you know him at that time, and what is your opinion on him?
I didn't meet him for at least another decade, because I can't remember. I think I met him when I spoke in Vancouver, and I think I spoke in Vancouver in 2011, either 2000. Yeah, like around 2010 to 2011. So I'd already been coaching for over a decade by then. And then I really got to know him when I spoke in Manitoba, which was 2014. You know, but yeah, people think that we're much better friends than we are, because I've referenced him and stuff like that. But we've only really talked those 2 times that we, you know, spoke at the same event. You know, and then he used to have a blog that I read, you know, and that's actually where, you know, the Canada rules drill that I use, that, you know, in the clinic, you know, that I did in Manitoba, that I talked about Mike's drill. You know, I got that from the blog that he wrote. Kind of between the 2 times that we actually met in person. So, you know, I don't know him well other than his work. I know that, you know, he does a lot of good things, and his clinics are some of the best that you can find. You know, I know he's helped Canada basketball develop tremendously over the last, you know, 2 decades, I'd say. So, but yeah, we're not as close as a lot of people think.
The reason for asking you, because when I watched your clinics and when I watched his clinics, and when I compared them, like, I can see a lot of similarities in thinking and philosophy of basketball training, and how to coach, how to gain decision making, which is, according to you and him, I think the most important part of the development of a player, which I got from you guys and from some other coaches, and this also changed my perspective and perspective of many coaches all around the world. How should a coach approach the team? That's the reason why I ask you about Coach McKay, because I see a lot of similarities between you two and your philosophies. Your philosophy is in pair with his. I mean, there are some, of course, not everybody is the same, but I see a lot of similarities.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yes. we definitely think similarly. I know. I remember in 2014 when we were in Manitoba, we went out to dinner. You know, there were like 5 coaches, you know, and so they took us out to dinner, and so it was Mike and myself and Dan Becker, who was, I think, one of the Basketball Manitoba people, and a guy named John Giesbrecht, who is a young coach, who's now does a lot of like mental training stuff in Canada. And then there was one other coach, I believe, that was there. And I remember, you know, us talking about the importance of decision making and stuff like that. And Dan, you know, was like, yeah, I get it on the passing, but on the shooting, I still, you know, we need the block reps and stuff like that. And Mike and I were both on the other side going, but why? Like, it's not the same shot. Like, it's not that we're saying don't ever do block practice or don't ever shoot without defense. But, you know, shooting without defense isn't the same as shooting with defense. Just like passing without defense isn't the same as passing with defense. You know, there's different constraints on the actions, and and ultimately, the closer the skill is to the one used in the game, the greater the transfer is going to be between practice and game. So, yeah. So I mean, I agree. Mike and I are very, very closely aligned on most things, I would think.
Yes. Okay. The next question is interconnected with what we just talked about. It's about your book, Fake Fundamentals, and a lot of drills which are like used by many coaches all around the world still to this day in 2025. First of all, I want to ask you, how did you come? Because I was watching your interview with Basketball Breakdown from 2015, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm also following Basketball Breakdown, and you talked about it came all like a fun. It wasn't serious in the beginning, like Fake Fundamentals, and then you developed that book and everything. And I'm wondering, how did you come up with those ideas with Fake Fundamentals? And also, I would like to talk about triple threat, three-man weave. But let's first start with how did you get the idea to write this book, and what influenced you to start in doing that?
It's a long time ago. I mean, I had talked about some of those things before, like the newsletter that I write and tweets and stuff like that. Excuse me, and it called. Excuse me. I know around the same time, there was a soccer Twitter account that I followed, and he's the one that I got the term PlayStation coaching from, and at one point, we were using the word pseudoscience, and I originally called some of the fake fundamentals just time wasters. And then the fake fundamentals kind of, like the name kind of came up. I think it came up in a tweet. I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was with Sefu Bernard, who also works in Canada and the WNBA, but I could be wrong about that. And so then once I had the name, then it was going like, oh, this is worth writing a book, kind of using it like the term is too good. And so, yeah, I mean, at first it was kind of a joke, and it was I wanted to see how well, just Kindles would sell, like something like, originally I only made it as a Kindle. And I just wanted to see like the difference in sales, a short book, relatively short book, and stuff like that. And so, I was going through and I was like, all right, well, I can easily come up with 10 things. And so I'll just do 10 fake fundamentals, just kind of like as a, I had just written 21st century basketball practice. So it was kind of like an extension of that. Like, all right, this is what I said, you should be doing a practice, but people do these other things that we're going to call fake fundamentals. And, most of the ideas in fake fundamentals are the same ideas as in 21st century basketball practice. They're just kind of explained through more specific drills, I guess. So 21st century basketball practice doesn't talk about specifically like the three-man weave and why not to do it and what to do instead, but it generally talks about how to improve, drills and the differences between block practice, and random practice and variable practice and constant practice and stuff like that. So, from that standpoint, yeah, it was a little bit like, I never expected, I didn't call the first one Volume 1 because I never expected to write more. But then people actually liked it, and like people would send me, they'd be like, well, what about this? Is this a fake fundamental? And you should write another fake fundamental book, and it should have this in it and stuff like that. And so then I wrote the second one, and because the first book had 10, I wanted to do 10 again. But when I started out, like Volume 2, I already had 15, so I had to cut down to 10, and so then, a little bit, I was like, oh, I might as well, I already got 5 started, I could probably come up with 5 pretty easily. And so anyway, so that's how I ended up writing 5 different volumes of fake fundamentals. Not all of them kind of are the same. You know, they're not all drills. You know, some of them are more teaching points or the way that things are taught. You know, like closeout isn't like a closeout drill. It's more, you know, like how closeouts have traditionally been taught versus how I think they should be taught. You know, things like 6 a.m. workouts and mile fitness tests and stuff like that obviously aren't drills, but to me, that's kind of, they all kind of fit together, you know, like they're things that they're traditional things that everybody does without really questioning because they've been done so long. And so I basically question them.
Yes, we all did 3-man weave, triple threat moves in the past. Like that's a well-known like drills in the basketball world, not only in US but in Europe and in other parts of the world too.
Right.
And when I was playing, I was also wondering what this, like I was thinking, is there a benefit to this drill? I was always trying to, when I was playing, I was trying to asking myself if this drill is helping the team. And when I started to get into coaching and when I was starting to like investigating a lot of coaches, a lot of approaches, different styles, I got more and more interested about those kind of drills. So can you tell me? Let's talk in specific about 3-man weave, just in short, because we have a lot more questions to cover. Can you tell me, because 10 years ago on the Basketball Breakdown podcast, you said that there might be one like reason to do 3-man weave, and that's the conditioning. But yeah, I also have the similar opinion. But can we make some kind of game-based, like can we create ourselves better conditioning drill which suit our system of play, so we don't need a 3-man weave? Because 3-man weave, you will never, like you said, you will never pass the ball and run behind your player. Then he will pass the ball or run behind his player, and that creates bad habits in the beginning, especially with the young players. And that kind of transition offense never happened in a real game. So why would we teach something like that and create bad habits for players when we can create better game-like and according to our system drills or small-sided games, to be specific? So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know, I remember early on in my coaching career, I read an article in Men's Journal magazine about a Division III college football coach from Minnesota, and I think he became the winningest football coach in the country. And basically he said that when he took over as a coach, he basically got rid of everything he didn't like to do as a player. Like that was his methodology. It's like, I didn't like doing any of this stuff, so we spent most of our practice just playing flag football. Like, and that's how we teach, and that's how we learn how to play football. And then we just go out and we play on Saturdays. And so I kind of did the same thing as a coach. Like, why would I make players do things that I didn't like to do as a player? Like, I just don't understand that. I know some coaches always, well, I did this as a player and it made me tougher or it made me better, or I'm good and I did this and all this kind of stuff. But like, you know, most of the jobs that I had, especially starting out, you know, keeping players interested and making it fun and stuff like that was important to me. Like, you know, I mean, coaching 9-year-olds or coaching junior varsity high school girls, like, it's not the main emphasis shouldn't be on, you know, seeing how tough we can make it or hard or how skilled we can make the players. It's the first thing is making them enjoy the experience and want to come back tomorrow. So that's basically what I did. It's like, well, I'm just not going to do the stuff that I didn't like to do unless there's something that I find I can't replicate any other way, right? And so, you know, 3-man weave, I would not use the three-player weave for conditioning. You know, I haven't, I don't. I don't even think I've ever used a 3-man weave in a practice in my life, other than I use a little half-court one that I got from Abradovic, I believe. as kind of a warm up drill into a pick and roll kind of thing. But anyway, so but I can see if somebody comes to me and is like, well, I need to do conditioning, and if I just have players, run baseline to baseline, they don't run 100%. But if I have them do a 3-man weave and make whatever 60 layups in 2 minutes, then they run 100%, and there's a consequence, and we get more out of it. Okay, like at least you've thought about it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of the basics of thing for all the fake fundamentals is. I'm not trying to say you should never do something. I'm trying to say you should have a reason, and you should know why you're doing something. And that reason shouldn't be because somebody else has done it or because it's always been done. And so if you go, hey, you know what? I just want my guys running today in practice. Maybe it's early in the season. Maybe you have a break between games, whatever. We just need to run a little bit. 3-man weave will get them running harder. It'll get a little passing. Maybe we'll call out names, get a little bit of communication. Maybe we're not talking as much as we need to. We just need to get a little bit more vocal. Great. You have a reason. You have a purpose for why you're doing this drill. Personally, I've never found that to be the best way to do those things, but that doesn't mean that I'm, always right. So, if I want to do conditioning and practice, I would rather do 3-on-3 with no dribble. I think that is a great, passing drill that is also conditioning. I think if you do 2-on-2 in a small space, it is a very taxing physically drill, and so even though you're not running as far, the change of directions and the physical contact, it ends up being more physically intense than just the running. So, yeah, I think there are better ways to practice passing. I think there are better ways to condition players. But, if you come to me and say, this is my purpose for this drill, and you've thought about, maybe there's alternatives, but, this one, all the guys know how to do it, so I don't have to explain something new. We can get into it right away. Great. You've thought about it. You have an idea. You have a purpose. Then cool, go ahead and do it. It's not wrong. But to me, it's just not. Excuse me, it's just not the best way.
Yes, and the famous sentence I receive from coaches is, "The famous coaches is doing it, so
Yeah.
I need to do it." This is the most common answer I'm receiving from the coaches in Serbia, and there are a lot of variations in 3-man weave. Like you can pass to the middle guy, then middle guy to the left or right side, then they can be in a tight space and stuff like that. I also don't have a issue with if you do for conditioning once in a while, like that's fine. But if every practice you do 3-man weave for 15 to 20 minutes, and I know a lot of coaches who are doing that, that's a waste of time for me. And I cannot really, I cannot say anything positive about that if you do every practice, because we always need more time, as far as you know. We always lack time for practice. We always want to do something else. We never have time. But if you waste time on some things which will never happen in a game, or maybe 1% of the time, then you're not doing something good for your players regarding improving and stuff like that. So yeah. And the second question is, we know where basketball is going. Basketball is going in advantage-based situations. So basically, as soon as we get the advantage, we want to create handicap situations, and we want to get the best possible shots out of that. So, what is your opinion about triple threat? Because by creating, I've seen many times this. When we create 5-on-4, and when some guy dribble penetrate and pass the ball, he used triple threat, we lost the advantage at that point. Instead of doing like a stampede dribble or something like that, which is very useful in today's game, triple threat is a more of an old school way when it was half court based basketball, and when it was a mid range, like the most important part of the game. I'm not saying that mid range is dead or anything, or the coaches should not use it, but I can see it work it only when you play isolation 1-on-1. But what is the other purpose of teaching the players triple threat? What's your opinion on that?
Um, yeah, I just think triple threat is a misnomer because once you catch and hold the ball, you're not a threat anymore. Like you've given away your advantage, like you said. So once you catch and hold, you're basically a passer. And so that's mostly useful when you're running a play, or you're catching and potentially you're catching and you're waiting for somebody to come set a screen for you, and you don't want to use up the dribble before you have a chance to use that screen, because maybe you'll make it, um, easier for you to go away from the screen, whatever. So, obviously, most of the time on the catch, we want to go right away. If we're going to drive, or we want to shoot right away. If we're going to shoot, sometimes we're going to catch the ball, or we want to make the next pass right away. So make the next pass. Take the good pass to great. However you want to say it. But some of the times we're going to catch the ball, we do hold the ball. Maybe we want to get the ball in the post, wait for a screen, etc. So, maybe we're running an action where we pass and then we screen away, and we're trying to get somebody off the stagger. So there are times we hold the ball. And so if you call that position triple threat, that's fine. To me, you're not a triple threat at the position. You're a passer. And as I say, like, I was always taught triple threat. You put the ball down on your hip, you get in a crouched position. And so if we're saying that, if I'm holding the ball, I'm basically a passer first. If I'm an inbound passer, do I get in a triple threat position in a crouched position with the ball on my hips? No. Every inbound passer you see stands up tall and they have the ball high where they can throw, a different pass. And so to me, if I'm just catching the ball and holding it and waiting for, somebody else to get open, I want to be in that, an athletic position, but I want to be relatively tall because I want to be able to see over my defensive player, and I want to be able to use my pivot foot to create a passing lane, whether, that's stepping into the defensive player and sweeping the ball through, or whether it's stepping outside of the, defensive player, whatever it might be. So, if you want to term that all as triple threat, that's fine, but that's not how I was taught triple threat. And that's not what, I think triple threat practice, typically entails. And I generally don't see much use for, a jab step, jab and go, jab and crossover step. I think the exception to that is if you catch with your back to the basket, and on your, basically as you're pivoting to face the basket, you essentially use that step as your jab step, and so you accentuate the step with the ball, and then you make your crossover drive. Like, to me, that's the one time where a traditional jab and crossover type move works. But I also think that's, kind of a different situation than what most, triple threat is taught. And then, like, part of it is semantics. I mean, I think it is valuable to be able to use a pivot foot under pressure. And if you want to term all of that as triple threat, that's great. I talk about, one of my books, Hard to Guard, using a space step. So if I need to sweep from side to side, I step into the defensive player with a bigger, longer step than a typical kind of jab step, and stuff like that. So I think footwork is important, and an understanding of a jab step is probably part of good footwork in basketball. But I just don't see many times in a game where you actually use a jab step as an offensive move. And I don't think when you catch the ball and hold it that you're still a triple threat. I think you're a passer first, and if nobody gets open, then maybe you have to try to dribble and create something yourself. But I think that's different than, what we think of as triple threat. With the speed of the game today and the advantage systems of basketball, the triple threat has to be before you catch, and so you have to know on that catch, as soon as the ball's in your hands, are you shooting, passing, driving? If you're driving, should you make that stampede before you even catch the ball and already be on the move? Or are you catching as part of an offensive set where you're going to, hold the ball? And again, if you want to call that triple threat, great, but it's something different than the traditional triple threat.
Yes. And I've seen many coaches, especially in my area here, that the staple of their practice is a triple threat, especially for the 6 to 7 to 8 years old. and I had a discussion with them, especially with one of my close friends, with which I say hello to him now. I had discussion with him because he said that the players need a technique before they can get the decision making, and I'm not in line with that. I think my opinion is that they can do both of the things at the same time, and I think it's very important to start to play more small-sided games in a young age, and not to bother them with a lot of technique details. But we will get to that later. Also, the triple threat. I don't know your opinion about that, but the triple threat is contradictory to driving kick game. Because if we teach our players to play out of the advantage driving kick, we cannot teach them to do the triple threat at that point. So this
Right.
is those things are going sideways. So that's also the obvious reason why in my practices I also try to minimize the triple threat as much as possible. Okay, I've seen here in your book like static stretching before practices, and I wanted to ask you, because this is like we can say 70 to 80-year-old tradition, maybe even 100. I don't know. Maybe James Naismith did the static stretching before practice. Is there any like scientific proof of that? Is there anything which proves that players get less injured if we do static stretching before practice? Since you finished, you had a major in this area, and are there any books that prove, and are there any like proofs, like and how to say it? Basically, are there any like science books which prove that static stretching is benefits players before practice?
The last time I looked into it, there was very little conclusive research to suggest that static stretching before playing decreases injury risk. Generally, you know, it's not necessarily wrong. It doesn't increase, injury risk generally, but it also doesn't decrease injury risk. So for me, static stretching for the purposes of decreasing injuries, there's not a lot of research to support that. So then it becomes, well, is it necessary if that's why you're doing it? Because static stretching also doesn't warm up the player, which is why, most professional teams that use static stretching, they do some jogging or running, or they do 5-on-0 plays, up and down, for 10 minutes or whatever. And then they go in and then they stretch, so they warm up and then they stretch. So the stretching isn't their warm up. So to me, stretching isn't a warm up and it doesn't decrease injuries. So why should we stretch? To me, stretching and research, I think, supports this. Static stretching should be more after practice, as part of a recovery or cool down, process, and that's where you're going to see more benefits. I do use a dynamic warm-up, and my reason for using a dynamic warm-up, I don't use a lot of the kind of dynamic exercises that are basically like static stretching but walking, you know what I mean? My dynamic warm-up is more to teach movements that I think children don't master anymore. So skipping, hopping, jumping, things like that, backpedaling. My dynamic warm-up is going to be more of these things and less of the kind of quote-unquote walking stretches that a lot of teams do as kind of a dynamic movement. I'm more interested in using the time to teach movements, and that's why a lot of the basketball specific movements that I eventually teach are basically the specific application of the general movements that we do during our dynamic warm-up. So if we run and stop, so I usually go sideline to sideline. So, okay, run to the other sideline and backpedal back. Okay, well, that's going to be a little bit like how you close out, right?
Yes.
And if we run, if I want you to run to the sideline and then run back, well, now we're teaching you how to hockey stop to change directions, and so teaching these different things. Bounding is basically a Euro step, when you do it with a basketball. The general movement is a bound or a leap, going from one foot to the other. So we practice these things as general movements in a warm up, and we try to train them so they get better at the general, because I get college players. When I coached college, I had college players showing up and they didn't know how to skip, and they couldn't coordinate their movements and stuff like that. So to me, you're not going to be a great player if you're not great at the fundamental movements. And so, a Dutch soccer coach said, was it movers become athletes and athletes become specialists, and the specialists would be, the skill or the sport performance. So, you need to be a good mover first. And if you can't skip, if you can't run with decent technique, if you can't stop, if you can't jump, if you can't land, okay, then you're not going to be a good athlete. If you're not a good athlete, you're not going to be a good, player. So that's the purpose for my dynamic warm-up. If all my players were, excellent at all the basic movements, then I likely wouldn't even bother with that. I just go straight into, a light shooting drill just to get a light warm-up and then into, more intense things. But I like to have those short dynamic warm-up, because I know most players that I coach haven't mastered the movements yet.
Yes, amazing answer. I really like it. Yeah. So basically, the next thing we want to talk about is decision making, and basically how to teach it. What is your way of teaching it, and did it change over the last maybe 10 to 15 years in your career, like approach and game-based approach, small-sided games and stuff like that? So how important is decision making in a young player, and how much time should we spend on decision making in each practice? I'm talking here about not the professional teams, I'm talking here about the youth teams, under 12, under 14, under 10, under 8, which you have experienced a lot with those kind of with this kind of age. So should we focus more on decision making? Should we focus more on technique, or should we bond these two together? And what kind of percentage should we do this?
I think the majority of practice should include some form of a decision, and sometimes that decision is going to be, you could argue it's not even really a decision, but and some of the time, especially depending on ages, the decision is going to be a fairly easy decision. So, for example, a one-on-one advantage layup drill. So, however you want to start it, but you give the offensive player an advantage. Defensive player starts behind them in some way, or run around a cone to create an advantage. However you want to create the advantage.
Or hip to hip, for example. Right.
Right. But I'm even talking about a slightly bigger advantage, right? Where it's obvious that the offensive player is going to get the layup every time. Does that make sense? The defense, if everything's done correctly, the defense really shouldn't even affect the shot, right? So there's almost no decision there. But the offensive player still has to decide what shot they're going to take, and they have to be aware of that defensive player, right? And so even though the defensive player is barely even there, we might not even, especially as an experienced player or coach, we might not even look at that as a decision. The offensive player does have to make that decision. They do have to choose, am I going to stop on 2 feet, or am I going to shoot off 1 foot? Do I need to protect the ball? Do I need to cut off, the defensive player? Or do I just need to use speed, and beat them to the basket? These things. And so we don't even think of those as decisions, but they really are. Like, we're subconsciously making these decisions all the time throughout a game. And so that's kind of, the easiest kind of decision. And that's why, starting with those should be incorporated almost, from the beginning, of a player's career and from the beginning of practice. And then you work on to, if you want to work on passing, and your players are fairly inexperienced, and maybe their actual passing technique isn't very good yet, but you can still do things like 5-on-2, passing drill where there's always an open player for them to pass to because there's only two defensive players, right? Most of the time, if they move the ball fast, they're not going to be defended when they make the pass because the players, don't have time to recover into them. But they do have to be aware that there are defensive players there, and I have to identify which is the open player. Is it the player to my right or the player to my left? Is it the player straight across from me? So it's not a hard decision, but it is a decision. And it begins that process of making players, instead of just throwing the ball back and forth, I have to be aware of where defensive players are, to make this pass. Then I can't just catch the ball and throw it to somebody ahead of me, because that's what I do in my two-person, passing drills. I have to, be aware of where defensive players are and be aware of where my teammates are and be aware of who's open. And so when I catch the pass, I can make it before that defensive player gets to me and makes it a harder pass. So again, I think even with the youngest players, once they have some familiarity with the ball, I think you can start making decisions. And again, you can make the decisions as easy as it can be. Like I have a drill that I do with like the youngest kids, with everybody, except one person has a ball, and you dribble, and as soon as that person without a ball comes into your vision, then you have to pass that person the ball. And now you don't have a ball, so you have to move to get into somebody else's vision so that you can get the ball, And so again, it's not really decision making per se, but it is working on those interactions between teammates and moving and seeing how, I can't just stand here and expect the ball to come to me. I have to move and get myself so that my teammate sees me, and I have to dribble with my head up so that I see when somebody else doesn't have the ball and I can pass them the ball, and things that become kind of the foundation that we build upon to then make higher level decisions.
Yes, and building the anticipation in young players and how to anticipate is very important in progress of the players' skills in the future. I've seen countless of times a player who is talented and have a great technique, and this is the most common thing I'm seeing it in young players. Really talented, really great ball handlers, can play one-on-one, can go dribble penetration, can shoot spot up threes, can shoot even like side step or step back, like anything crazy. But when it comes to decision making out of the pick and roll, when it comes to the cutting, when it comes to the finding the open player, when tag is coming from the weak side, stuff like that, I've seen a lot of players which don't know how to counter and how to read those defenders. And I think this is the big problem in today's basketball. Where we are wasting the talent. I think I'm not saying we, you and me. I'm saying in a global way. I've seen countless number of times this. So this is why I'm telling you this, because I think we are doing something wrong. If player is a good like one-on-one player, skilled, that's a plus. That's a really, not everyone can play one-on-one. You should have some kind of talent for that. So why are we not building those players to become better decision makers? And the second part of this question is, is player born to be to have a good vision, to be really talented with decision making, with court vision and stuff like that, or can we with practice over the course of the years, I'm not saying in a week, I'm saying in a months, years. Can we teach the player how to read and how to get decisions out of the pick and roll, out of the off-ball screens, out of the cutting? Can we, with good practice, teach the players that?
I would say yes, we can teach that. I don't think anybody. There is no gene for being a good basketball decision maker, but I do think everybody has a different kind of ceiling. And I do think that there are some traits and qualities and characteristics that, whether they're purely genetic or whether they're influenced by early environment, that help some players become better decision makers than others. But I think the most important part is what happens once you start playing and the opportunities that you're afforded. And I think that's one of the things that I see, along the same lines of what you're talking about, is young teams, that are highly specialized in positions. So I wrote about this when I watched the Polish under-17s championships 2 years ago, when I went and watched that there were some good point guards, but entire teams were built around like this one player, and he's really the only person who makes a decision. The whole offense was set up that to the point where, the point guard would inbound the ball to somebody and then run and just get a handoff back, right? They don't even trust another player to inbound the ball. So then they get the ball back. They're the one that dribbles it up. They dribble into the front court. Then they pass the ball, let's say, to a trailer. They run through. The trailer holds the ball. Let's say they set a screen. Let's say it's kind of a horn set. So they set a screen to bring a cutter across. They don't even look for the cutter, whether he's open or not. And then he comes back and he gets, another handoff. And then, they either run a pick and roll from there, or they run the, the Bodoroga cut or something like that from the other side. Things like that. So, and that is great for the one player. The one player is making 4 or 5 decisions, on a possession, but nobody else is making a decision. Everybody else is just handing the ball off or going to set a screen where they're told to set a screen and stuff like that. And so, you end up with one player who gets to improve, and the rest of the players are just kind of along for the ride. And if that player doesn't end up becoming the best player from that team, then you've really limited the development of all the other players, And so if, in 2 of the teams, they had 7-footers on their team, but their point guards were, 5'9", and they were building the whole team around the 5'9", point guard, which to their credit, they're, the one kid's already playing in the professional league. So, he's really good for his age. But, if you have a 7-footer on your team, you should probably ask him to do more than just hand the ball back, to a point guard, because 3 or 4 years from now, you're going to be like, oh, this post player, he's 7 feet tall, but he just makes bad decisions on the court. Every time he gets the ball, he makes the wrong pass. He doesn't read the game well. And it's like, well, yeah, because he was on a under 17 team and you were playing him and didn't let him do anything. How do you expect? Like, that's what I was saying. Like, people, criticize post players. Oh, the point guards, they develop so much faster than tall people. It must be the coordination, or it must be, there's just something about tall people. And it's like, well, yeah, it's because point guards handle the ball and make decisions on every single possession.
Right.
And post players might go 2 or 3 possessions without even touching the ball, let alone making an actual decision. It's one thing, if I roll down, if I set a screen and I roll the basket and you throw an alley-oop to me and I dunk it, it's great. I get a touch, I get points, et cetera, but I didn't make a decision. I just caught the ball and dunked it. Like, it's not really making me better, in the same way that point guard who had to read, the defense, see the trap, see the help defense, see that I was running inside of the help defender, see that the help defender is only 6 feet tall and I'm 7 feet tall. So even if he is in the right position, he's not going to affect me dunking the ball, throw up the lob, be able to, put the right pace, the right height on the shot, on the lob pass. Like, I'm making, 10 or 12 decisions in that moment where the post player is just running to the basket and dunking. And so, of course, the point guard is going to have a more evolved skill level and be a better decision maker because he gets opportunities to make decisions. And so the way that we kind of correct that is, enable all the players to make decisions. And that means that you're at, 10, 11, 12 years old, you're letting bad players make decisions and they're going to make mistakes. But the only way that players improve is to make them mistakes, because the alternative is, you end up with players who are highly specialized so that you can win more games at youth levels, but then they stay highly specialized. And so now you have professional players that are highly specialized. And so, okay, you can go stand in the corner and you can make good shots, or you're a good shooter, but you can't do anything else, and so you're very limited, and you can only fill one thing, and you're a post player and you're just a rim runner and you can block shots and you can dunk, but you can't do anything else. And so you have to be surrounded by certain personnel, because you're a highly specialized player, as opposed to spending more time giving all the players different, playing different roles and making decisions, even if you've got a tall, awkward, 12-year-old who, you don't want him to dribble the ball up the court a lot because he's probably going to get the ball stolen because he's tall and awkward. Okay, that's fine. So have somebody else dribble it up, but let him catch the ball, as a trailer, out of the high post and, run a pick and roll for him, or let him initiate the offense, or let him drive, or don't just say, okay, you're going to catch the ball here and hand it back to somebody else, or you have to just go stand under the basket and you offensive rebound. And if you get the ball, great, shoot it. If you don't get the ball, then run back on defense and block some more shots. Like, you can't expect players to develop into good decision makers without allowing them, to make decisions both in practices and games.
Yes. And I think most of the coaches at the youth level are making mistakes because they're not allowing their players to grow, and they're saying all the mistakes to the players they make. I think the players coach need to ask a lot of questions to the players to develop their thinking, and to make them understand better the basketball. Because if you give player all the answers, he will not remember. He will not think on his own, and that's a problem on itself. And regarding your answer for the youth Polish team, what is your opinion on because I've seen this a lot, many times. For youth teams, I can say about Serbia and my region here, which I'm in. The coaches mostly play 3 out, 2 in the youth. I think that's very wrong. That's just my opinion, because you're not developing players to play all positions. Because that's the basketball is going in that direction. We can see in the NBA, like, the fives are getting to the perimeter a lot more. They're playing inverted pick and roll sometimes with Jokic, with some other bigs. They are short rolling and making decisions out of the short roll. The game has changed over the past decade and maybe 5 years and 15 years. So I think that 5 out or 4 out, 1 in, like, you can change it, but 3 out, 2 in is a little bit old school way of playing. And you're not developing players if you put them on the 2 blocks and they just do, like, I don't know, blocker move or offense or stuff like that. So what is your opinion on that for the spacing? We are talking now about the spacing in the youth, on the youth level.
I don't think I've seen anybody run a 3 out, 2 in lately. But
I've seen it.
Most teams I see just play 5 out. Which I'm honestly not even a big fan of 5 out, just because, I think the spacing actually gets poor on the perimeter, and ultimately, you want somebody in, like, whether that person is as a cutter or whether that person's stationary in, but I think all offenses end up, with 1 in, and usually 2, like. That's one thing that we talked about last year. We started wide, but every time we got to drive to the basket, we didn't want just 4 players standing on the 3-point line while 1 person drove to the basket. We always wanted that second player, at least a second player coming to the basket, for a pass or for an offensive rebound, if nothing else. So I think the, spacing, I think we need to look at it more dynamically than just, thinking, okay, 5 out, so these are the 5 spots that are filled. But those are just the 5 spots that we want filled, to initiate, or to run our first action. Or those are the 5 spots that we're running, the court, running in transition to get to, we're changing the floors. But ultimately, regardless of what we're running, players should be in movement, and there's not really a static spacing then, or definitive. Your spacing should be continually changing between 5 people out and 4 people out and 3 people out, and maybe even 2 people out. As if I'm driving to the basket, I've got a roll coming to the basket, but I also get a baseline cutter on the strong side cutting to the basket. Now we've got 3 people that are basically in, and 2 people that are out. So trying to put more pressure on the rim. So I think if we think about spacing a little bit more dynamically, I think that solves a lot of the problems. But I think ultimately, I think all players need to have all skills. I think the problem with playing 5 out is nobody develops post skills, and like you even see it in the NBA. Like the best post player in the NBA now is probably Jalen Brunson. Like just backing people down and making up and unders and stuff like that. Like that's kind of traditional post play. He's just doing it.
Very right, cool. Yeah.
Like the best center, is Jokic, but he's playing at the 3-point line or running an offense, off the elbow, basically as a playmaker or a, traditional point guard. He's just dribbling less than a traditional point guard. So the roles have kind of reversed in that respect. But I think the best players need to be able to play inside and out, play with their back to the basket, play facing the basket, and so I think when people talk about positionless basketball, it ends up being 5 out, nobody plays in the post. And to me, I want my guards, like the last few teams I've had, every time we need a basket, we go to our big guard and just put them in the post against the little guy, because the little guy doesn't know how to guard in the post anymore, and stuff like that. So, I want my little guys to want to post up, and I want big guys, if they feel like they have a matchup, I want them to post up, and I want big guys to run to the 3-point line and shoot threes and handle pick and rolls and come off screens. I want all of them to do everything. I don't want, just one person doing one thing and another person doing the other. And to me, that's the best way, especially at early ages, to develop players, because, when you're working with, 10 and 12-year-olds, you don't know who's going to end up being the 7-footer and who's going to end up being, 5'7". And if the guy that's, I remember a long time ago, I trained two players, and the taller kid was like, they were 10 years old, I think, and the taller kid was like 5'6", and but his dad was 5'6", and so he comes. I'm like trying to work on extending his range, even only just out to like the free throw line, and he's like, well, my coach will only let me shoot inside the key, so I don't want to practice out there. I'm like, bro, you're 5'6" and you're the same height as your dad. Like, you're not a center. Like, your coach might be playing you as center right now, but you're not a post player. You got to be a point guard. Like, there's no way you're going to be any taller than 5'8", 5'9". Whereas the other player who was playing as a point guard because he was short, because he was young for his age, his dad was 6'1", 6'2", had been a college football player. Like, in all reality, he was going to be 6'3", 6'4", which, isn't going to be a professional, post player, but, at the high school that he ended up attending, like, he was big enough to be, a post player if necessary, but he was shooting threes, even though it was clear that he was going to end up the taller person just because he was shorter at that age. It's like, well, yeah, but you can see who's going to be taller. Like, this kid's done growing. Like, he's going to be short. This guy's going to be taller. He might not ever be tall enough to truly be a post player, but he's going to, of the two of them, he's going to be the tallest player. But we're letting him shoot threes and encouraging him to shoot threes because he's shorter right now. And the player who we know is going to be short for the rest of his life, we're telling him he can't shoot outside the key because right now, at 10 years old, he's taller. Like, this just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I agree. What can I say more?
Yeah.
And what is your opinion on spacing after the I'm just giving now an explanation. I'm just giving one example. If 5 men or 4 men is coming to the top pick and roll or middle pick and roll or side pick and roll, after that, when the pick and roll, when he rolls to the basket, what is your opinion on the short corner spacing? Or should he, your opinion on short corner spacing or block spacing, strong side, weak side. What are your teaching points, and what is your overall philosophy on that specific subject?
Um, it slightly shifts whether we're going towards the two-person side or the one-person side. Um, if we're going towards the two-person side, then I want him, running like we really want to get the ball to the post, and we want him running to the rim. And then if the ball goes back behind, to the shake on the behind the ball, then we want him probably posting up on the block. If we're going towards the one-person side, that there's a little bit more space for the guard to penetrate, and there's a little bit less space for the roll. So then it kind of depends on their help defense and whether he sees that he has space, to attack the basket, or sometimes we like off that he kind of basically short rolls, and then we look for the corner to cut and the wing to dive to the corner. So we kind of have it keeps the same type of spacing where we have kind of one behind the ball with the short roll as we're attacking hard to the rim. And then we've got the baseline cut coming. So if the baseline help defender helps on that penetration, so again, it kind of depends on how they guard the pick and roll too. But if we turn the corner and let's say they just, they either show or they, whatever, they stay post with post and guard with guard, as we turn the corner, we're getting closer to the rim. If it's the help defender coming over to stop the ball, then that baseline cut is what we like to get, even more so than the roll, because of the roller at that point is probably defended. If the post player's defender goes with the ball, whether it's a switch or whether it's a hedge, and so there's time. Well, then the ball should have gone to the if it's a hedge situation, the ball probably should have gone to the post already, and gotten out of the. If there's two people onto the guard, we want to get the ball out of their hands. So if it's a switch, then which matchup is better? Is the guard matchup better? Is the post matchup better? And so, if there's two behind the ball, if we're on defense, we're trying to triple switch that. So now I want that player to read it and probably go towards the ball side. So we're either making their triple switch come further, or clearing out potentially two defensive players, so that we get more penetration back. The guard who got the switch can square up and then look for the crossover to attack, hopefully into more open space. But I know that's kind of hard to visualize.
Yes, I understood it. So basically, like a baseline cut out of the corner, if the weak side defender helps. Yeah. So do you have, when you're coaching, we are now going into little because coaches are interested in this. We have a lot of coaches here who are not here. Unfortunately, they have practices, or because it's practice time in Serbia. It's 8:20. So now most of the coaches here have practices with their teams. So do you have what is your opinion on automatics? And is it important that did you have, for example, when you were in Sweden or Denmark? At that time, did you had automatics out of the high post, out of the low post? So basically, what is your philosophy on that?
I don't even remember Sweden, but Denmark, I probably had adopted, like, my number one automatic is on a pass to the low post. If it's received outside the paint, if it's received inside the paint, we're probably going directly up for the shot, right? There's at that point, we probably don't need a move. It's just the post players pivoting and scoring, hopefully. But assuming it's passed into the post outside the paint, I want the passer has to cut. And so most of the time we want that cut to be kind of over the top, like we're going to the elbow and kind of rounding that cut to the rim. Sometimes if they have, that quick advantage, it can be just a straight line to the rim, looking for that quick bounce pass as they're cutting. Or if they're going towards the elbow, they can always set a screen for somebody to come back behind the ball, kind of warrior style, um, looking for the post splits. But I don't want my passer to stand, and I don't want my passer just to relocate on the same side. I want to get movement. And so the first thing we're looking for is that give and go. Second thing we might be looking for is that screen, and maybe the screen and then the dive to the rim, or if nothing else, we're just clearing out to the other side. And now, so the post player catches and they have to wait, for that first cut. And then now if they don't find somebody, now they've got the chance to go one-on-one. And if they don't create something, then hopefully somebody's coming behind them for the pass out. Or potentially if a double team's coming or something like that, maybe they have to look to the opposite wing for the pass out. So that's one main automatic. We tried to do an automatic, well, not even an automatic, but last year. So if we were in a 5-out and the pass, what was it? If the pass was, we passed it to the trailer, and the trailer was behind the passer, then they either cut to the basket and cleared out, or the corner came and set a flare screen. If they passed it to the trailer who was ahead of them, so the trailer got ahead of them, and so I'm crossing half court and they're at the let's say they're already at the top of the key and I pass it to them. I can either chase that, because now the pass receiver has their back to the basket, so they're not in a position where, yeah, so I can chase it for the get, or same thing, I can still get. I have the corner can come up for the flare screen as well, so I can pivot and throw the flare screen. So those were kind of our options off of those. I don't know that we did it that well, and then if we made the pass ahead on the wing. Our option was we could basket cut, or we could screen away. Those were basically our two options. So they weren't 100% automatics because they're everybody had a choice. But basically it was like an either or kind of thing, just to try to simplify the options. And like when I got there, my team was very heavy 5-out, and just one guy would penetrate. We didn't get a lot of ball movement. And our spacing tended to be poor. Like most of our turnovers early in the season were just dribbling into single gaps and not being able to get through. And so, more or less the goal was, if we're going to just penetrate, we want to get a double gap. So if we throw it to the trailer and they're going to penetrate, well, I need to cut and get out, or I can use the flare screen to get out, and at least that occupies, the second defender. And now the trailer has a little bit more space to drive. So it was just trying to get a little bit of simple movement to create better driving lanes.
Yes, I agree. And I think automatics are really important according to your personnel, of course. We are talking now because nothing is black and white in this in coaching job. And this is also my problem with some professional coaches, which I also talked about in this podcast with my friend Milos, who is here. We talked about how coaches go to some professional league and they try to implement their strategy, their philosophy to any team they go, but they're not thinking if that team is suitable to play that way. And this is what I think is where coaches are making mistakes, because automatics can vary from personnel to personnel. So you basically as a coach need to adapt to different kind of environments, and this is very important if you want to be a successful coach. This is just my opinion, of course, based on everything I was reading and also my thinking. So I think we are on the same page regarding that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yes. Okay. So one more question in this spacing area, but I would really like to be quick. Do you prefer, for example, if there is a baseline drive, do you prefer to have a 45 wing cut from the weak side? What is your opinion on that?
Yes.
So that's basically an automatic for your teams. And
Yeah, it's pretty close to an automatic. Yeah.
and how do you practice this situation in practices? How do you practice it? Do you do like 4-on-3 baseline drive with advantage, for example, hip to hip? Do you have some constraints? Can you share some kind of constraints you're doing it in these handicap situations to make them evolve as a decision makers? And this is the question I got from some coaches to ask you regarding specifically this.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we do a lot of just 5-on-5 playing, but we do a lot of 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 advantage. You know, yeah, starting on the hip or starting behind, having place the ball, or sometimes not so much with 4-on-4, but 3-on-3 we might start with the defensive player squared up, and the offensive player or the defensive player has to touch one cone or the other. And as soon as they move to touch the cone, then the offensive player can go. So, basically they're all the same. They're just different ways of creating that, of starting with an advantage, basically, a small advantage, and then trying to extend that advantage based on, wherever we're starting from, whether we're starting from the baseline, we're starting from the wing, we're starting from, the top, and then we might put players, we might start with, somebody from the wing on the left side of the court, and then put in a 4-on-4 and put, top of the key, 45 and corner. We could start from the top of the key, put 1 on the left side and 2 on the right side. So we just change the starting point, as much as possible, or each practice we do a different one. Like yesterday we did 4-on-4, from the top. So today we'll do 4-on-4 from the wing. Yesterday we did nobody on the strong side. Today we'll do one person on the strong side. So we do a lot of that. Both, we'll do it as 3-player with only 2 defensive players, and use it as a shooting drill, and so they have to read whether they're open or to make the one more pass. So that is a lot of, what I would call our skill development practice, is doing 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 out of those kind of advantage situations, so that we're, reading that first defender, and then offensive players off the ball are reading, well, should I stay and shoot? Like, am I open? Am I creating the space where I'm giving the guy with the ball, an advantage, or should I make that cut to the basket? And to me, like, the more we just play with it, the better the decision making gets. And it's never perfect, but I think if you're empowering players to make decisions, you can't expect perfection. If you desperately crave perfection, then you need to script every single play and tell players exactly where to go on every single possession. And to me, you're probably not going to be successful, because that makes it very easy to scout. If that's the one thing about having automatics that are every single time, like, at some point, then the defense catches on and they know your automatics. They know that every time you drive baseline, you've got the 45 cut. So they know that's what they need to defend. I know we played a couple teams like that. I was like, okay, if they drive baseline, some help defender get to the front of the rim, because that's all they're doing, is they're just trying to throw the ball to their post player coming to the front of the rim. So it doesn't matter who, just somebody stand there so they can't get the post player, make them throw it out to one of the non-shooters on the perimeter, because that's what they do every single time. And so we don't make it and every single time automatic, but that's our preference, is we get the 45 cut. Sometimes if the baseline defender turns their back, it can be the baseline defender making a banana cut, and coming up and over top for them. Sometimes it can be, if we have 3 out, it can be somebody from the top of the key coming straight down to the front. But we want to get that second player cutting to the basket in a position where we can make the pass to them.
Yeah. The goal is basically to make them deceptive, to make them make counters for the defense. So if this is not working, I need to do this. How to read the game in a better way, and that's really important. And the thing you just said, like changing the spots of spacing in practice, is one of the most valuable things I've learned over the past couple of years, and I just heard from you. I heard from many coaches, many great coaches. I've heard from Alex Sarama. I've heard from you. I've heard from Michael McKay. I've heard from Harry Marunen, which I got to listen from you. Basically, I was reading because I have in my PC. I have a lot of basketball material, and I have one clinic notes. And I'm reading clinic notes, and I found one of your clinic notes. It was very interesting. And coaches, there is like a small area of coaches to follow, and you mentioned two coaches, Michael McKay and Harry Marunen. And then I found Harry, and I was listening some of his podcasts, and I found him really, really amazing, and I would like him to bring him on this podcast as I brought you. So I will look that forward. But back to the changing spots of the spacing, because basketball is it's a messy game. Nothing will be like you practice, so everything will be mixed up, a little bit turned upside down. So we need to prepare our players to play in a messy environment. And that's basically the idea, to change the two sides, one side, the defenses, the offenses, how they guard ball screens, to read, to make the constraints. And in that way, we're going to build our players to play smart and to be decisive. So I think we agree on that too.
Definitely.
Yes. Okay, now I have one interesting...
Hey, let me get my charger real quick.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay. The switch or screen your own.
So are we talking about an on-ball screen?
Yes, we can go. We can talk on ball, and we can also go or for the off ball.
Yeah, on ball, I'd probably say boomerang.
And off ball, what is your best? What is your advice for the coaches?
Off ball, if we know they switch things, we just run a flare and look for the flare and slip.
Yeah, slip. Yeah. Okay.
That's why I put in a set with every team early in the season that includes the flare and slip, and that's why it's one of our automatics too, since so many teams switch these days, because you can get a couple easy baskets usually early.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I like the Princeton offense, which is very hard to learn, but this is modern approach to the Princeton offense, not like the old style Princeton offense, and this is one of the reasons why I like the Princeton in general. And the last question is small sized games or on-air drills, and why?
Small-sided games, because everything depends on the interactions with teammates and opponents.
Okay, and I think we got to almost everything. And now the like practical advices for the young coaches. What is your what do you think you made a lot of mistakes when you were younger, and you would like to knew that earlier? Like that's the first thing. And what is the best way for young coaches to improve? How can they improve in the best way according to you? And what is your like practical advices for anything you will want? You can say.
Mistakes, I would say. It kind of reflects to both sides. So I think there's, when I'm asked this question, there's two things. Are you trying to become the best coach possible, or are you trying to get the best coaching job possible? Because, I don't know what Serbia's like, but in the States, it's hard to work up. So what I mean is, if you want to be a college basketball coach, you probably need to start at the college level. Even if you start in a low position like a student manager or a graduate assistant or something like that, but you need to be in the game at the level at which you want to coach. But I don't think that's the best way to become the best coach possible. I think to become the best coach possible, you need to coach. And being a student manager, being a GA, you run errands, you do laundry, maybe you do a little bit of the scout team stuff. But but you're not making decisions as a coach. And so just like, we need players to make decisions. Ooh, excuse me. We need players to make decisions, and start making decisions at young ages so they become better decision makers. For me, to become a better coach, you need to make decisions. You need to be the one doing the problem solving, and not just relying on the head coach to do it, or all the time. So I think coaching at different levels helps you to become a better coach, not just because it's easier to get a head coaching job at, let's say, an under 10 team than, to become a college head coach, but because, you learn different skills and utilize different tools at each age group. And eventually you're going to run into situations where something that happened with a, 10 or 12-year-old, now you have to use it with, an older player, a professional player, something like that. So, I think the mistakes that I made when I was young is I always trusted that quality would win out in the end. And so, like I worked camps and I just focused on the coaching, like I would do extra sessions with the players, and I would spend all my time with the players, like helping them improve and answering their questions and stuff like that. And I learned that that's not how the business works, that the business is all about who you know. And so you're better off not working as hard at the camp, but spending more time with the head coaches, or at a college camp, the assistant coach who's going to become the head coach, as opposed to being the guy like doing all the coaching and running extra sessions and stuff. I mean, I worked at camp where I swear to God, there was a girl about to get kidnapped because none of the coaches, it was University of Arizona basketball camp, and they had kids there that were too young. It was because it was an overnight camp, and there were kids that were too young. And the coaches were supposed to walk back and forth with the players from the gym to the dining hall and the dorms. But all the Arizona players were lazy, and so they all had a scooter or they all had a car, and so they would drive. And so there were only two coaches that would, walk between the gym and the dorm. And so one night I came out, and I was like the last person out with two of the older girls because, I'd been helping them, shooting or something after the session ended. And all the other players had taken off and they were driving. And I'm walking back with like two, 14, 15-year-old girls or something to the dorm. And some like 10-year-old girl, and because it's been so long since I've been there, but as I remember, like there was like a major street, parking lot, and then there was kind of the road, on-campus road that we took from the gym to the dorms. And so, we're one block off, a major road in Tucson, Arizona, which is not the safest city in Arizona. I mean, I had my car broken into at that basketball camp, on campus. So, not the safest place. And like this 9 or 10-year-old girl had just stopped. She was just sitting on the sidewalk next to a bush, and if I hadn't stayed there, like, I don't know if anybody would have found her, like, and so like I made those two 14-year-olds like walk back with her and take care of her and take her to the dining hall and sit with her and try to make, her feel better, whatever was wrong, and stuff like that. But like, so, but meanwhile, like the coaches who were in the car with the head coach or with the head assistant coach, they're the ones that got, hired to be college coaches, and stuff like that. And like that happened at multiple camps that I worked at that time. Is, it wasn't the one who was, doing all the coaching and on the court and being with players and stuff like that. I worked another coach where like 3 coaches at that camp became Division I assistant coaches, and I think 2 of them have been Division I head coaches now. And one of the campers at the camp, I was walking with her like 3rd day in or something like that, and I said something about, why were they talking to me? Why weren't they talking to the college players? Because the college players are essentially there to make the campers feel better. Like they're not supposed to be hanging out with a 20-something male, high school coach. They're supposed to be spending time with, the other, female players like that are there or whatever, and stuff. I'm like, why aren't you talking to her? They're like, coach, you're the only coach here who talks to us. Like all the other ones, they just talk to themselves. Like they don't talk to the players. They don't sit with us at lunch. Like they don't ask us questions. Like you're the only person who talks to us, because they were all busy like making their connections so they could get their jobs, when they graduated, and I was the dumbass who was just coaching, and trying to help the players. So like, that was kind of the mistake I made early in my career, was just not really understanding or just kind of trusting that at the end of the day, quality wins out. But in reality, like connections wins out, like who and knowing the right people in the right places. Like ultimately that's the most important thing in terms of getting a job, but not necessarily becoming the best coach.
So basically, knowledge in this business is not everything, and X and O's and practice design and stuff like that. It's not everything. Like connections and people is very very important. And this is not only in the U.S. I have to tell you. This is in
that's most places.
Countries.
Yeah.
And my view is also how can we as young coaches, how can we get over that? How can we get in a position to prove ourselves and to get the chance to coach in some place? Because I think a lot about this job is luck also,
for sure.
To be in the right time at the right moment, and as you know, you have a lot of experience, but it's a lot of luck, and also it's very important to be persistent. And I told you on the WhatsApp that I'm sure that you will find something soon, because your knowledge and your quality just cannot get unnoticed. So we are really looking forward to watch you at some club. We will cheer for you as soon as you get the job. We would like to see you in Serbia one day. So if you land a job in Serbia, I will talk with the guy who owns this Discord group, Miloš, and we would like to have a clinic like organized, so you can come to Serbia to talk to meet you in person and talk with you. And this is
amazing.
Yes, that would be really amazing. And I just wanted something else. I think. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say I have a friend in Serbia, Vlado. He keeps trying to figure out a way to get me over there too, but so far hasn't come up. I tried to get my team in Poland to go down to Serbia last year to play a game, but then my club wouldn't approve the budget. So I've been trying to figure out a way to get to Serbia, but hasn't happened yet. My dad actually spoke Serbian almost as early as he spoke English, because my grandfather was stationed there. So my dad lived there for about a year, I think, when he was like 3 years old.
Really, in Serbia?
Yeah.
Amazing. So you have connections with us here. And I just wanted to reply you said that Tucson is the most safe city in Arizona. I think Flagstaff is a better city than Tucson. I think it's more beautiful.
Oh yeah, no, I said Tucson is not a safe city.
You said Tucson is not a safe. Oh
no,
yeah.
Not a safe city at all. Like
yes.
I don't know crime statistics, but I know at that time, I know my car got broken into at University of Arizona. So, and I know it's not, traditionally it's not the safest city, but yeah, Flagstaff is awesome. I love Flagstaff.
Flagstaff is amazing. I haven't been there, but I'm into U.S. geography, and I'm trying to following the things, because I hope one day that I will get the chance to coach in a division on the division level. And this is not just, I'm not blindly. I know that it's very hard. I know that it's almost impossible, but that doesn't it's not like I will give up from that. So you can always think that you can do something. If you give up, you have 0% chance, but if you try, you can have at least 1% chance. So this is my goal. My actually dream is to coach on a division level in US, and the goal of many coaches in our group. So in the end, but really briefly, can you, because this will go on YouTube too, so this is now and we will upload it to the YouTube. Can you tell us where can we find you? How can the coaches contact you? Where can they buy your products? And also your YouTube channel and all the things, Hard to Guard newsletter, everything you want to say in the end regarding your things and stuff. You can just say it now so the coaches can follow you up.
All right. Probably Twitter, which is just my name, at Brian McCormick, or Instagram, it's at 180 shooter. So the numeral is 180 shooter. Those are probably the easiest places to find me and connect with me. My books are on Amazon. I don't know if you can get them in Serbia or
I'm
not.
not sure.
I know somebody asked me if they could get them in Germany last week, and they were able to. So, but I'm not 100% sure about Serbia. But that's the easiest or best way to buy any of my books is just search Brian McCormick Basketball on Amazon. You can hopefully find them there. And the same thing, my YouTube channel, it's easiest just to search Brian McCormick Basketball. And you should be able to find all my YouTube videos and clinics and so forth.
And Hard to Guard, how can they subscribe to the newsletter?
Oh yeah, it's Substack, so it's my name, brianmccormick.substack.com, I believe,
Okay.
to subscribe. Yeah.
Can you maybe, when we finish this, and you don't have to do it today when you have time, to just go in a chat here and to maybe share the link of the Substack and YouTube and everything, so the coaches can find you easier, if that's okay for you. No, you don't have to do it now. You can do it tomorrow when you have time.
Okay, like this chat or the other chat?
Like
no,
there is in the group there is a chat. Basically, it's in English, chat. You can see it.
Yeah.
It's chat and discussion. It's in Serbian, but the first word is chat. So you can post it there. I will just say something in Serbian. Miloše,